right, we are recording. Kate, I'm going to switch to you now.
I got it.
Awesome. Welcome, everybody. All right, we're right at 1, so we're going to get started. I'm Larry Law, the Executive Director of the Great Lakes Independent Booksellers Association. I'm joined today, as always, by Carrie Obrey, the Executive Director of the Midwest Independent Booksellers Association, Kate Scott, the Program Specialist of the Midwest Independent Booksellers Association. I want to thank our participating reps today, Danielle Zielinski from Hachette, John Mesjak, Sandra Law, and Emily Johnson from Abraham Associates, Emily Botica from Diamond Book Distributors, Matt Smiley from University of Minnesota Press, Valerie Pierce from Sourcebooks, and Alexa Wejko from Soho Press. The format of today's events will be as follows. Each rep will have 8 minutes. At 1 minute 2, I will notify them of their time, and then we will switch reps. Just a little bit of housekeeping. This event will be recorded and shared Friday. We had an amazing education session yesterday on how to be an ally in your community. That session is already online. It's on our YouTube page, and it's already on our on Heartland Full Forum website under the education tab. So please check that out. It was really great. And then tomorrow night, join us for an evening with Helen McDonald and Robin Wall-Kimmerer. Helen McDonald wrote Vesper Flights, and you probably know her from H is for Hawk. And Robin wrote Braiding Sweetgrass. So that's 7 to 8 p.m. Central, 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow night. Oh, I also quickly wanted to mention this year we are opening up the Voice of the Heartland nominations to booksellers or publishers. If you visit the if you visit heartlandfallforum.org, there's a tab up top to nominate for Voice of the Heartland. So please check that out. That being said, we're going to kick it off. Like I said, this event is, the session is recorded. I will be posting links to each of the Edelweiss collections as the reps are presenting. We're going to kick it off with Danielle Zielinski from Hachette.
Hi, it's good to be with everyone. Let me figure out how to share my screen. Oops. Oh, I've lost it. I'm sorry.
Should be across the bottom screen share if you hover over your video.
Okay. Sorry, I'm using up all my time. Okay. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm going to start with a few summer books that are just out, but have great reviews and events that are happening right now. And then I'll switch over to fall, beginning with a small selection of kids' books. So my first title is The King of Confidence, a tale of utopian dreamers, frontier schemers, true believers, false prophets, and the murder of an American monarch by Miles Harvey. It came out on the 14th, just about a week ago. The author lives in Chicago and works at DePaul, and a lot of you have picked up on this. There have been a couple of events already. You might know Miles Harvey from his previous books, The Island of Lost Maps and Painter in a Savage Land. The King of Confidence is a rollicking tale as much about an important period of history as it is about James Strang, the self-proclaimed divine king of earth, heaven, and Beaver Island in Michigan. He was very much a man of his time, the 1840s, a failed and deeply in debt lawyer. He did what so many did at that time. He moved out to the frontier, which was then Illinois and Wisconsin would have been the frontier, to
Totally.
remake himself in a big way. So he was the quintessentially American self-made man, and you can see the parallels between that time and the time that we're living in now, ripe for a confidence man. This book is full of good humor and adventure and fascinating historical detail. It reads like The Professor and the Madman and Devil in the White City. The Pull of the Stars by Emma Donoghue is just out yesterday. This was a drop-in, so I was a little worried that it wasn't getting the attention it deserved. It's an oddly comforting and hopeful pandemic novel set in 1918 flu-ravaged Dublin over the course of 3 days in a quarantine maternity ward. It's a compact, intimate literary thriller, so it really speeds along. It's life and death. And it's written without quotation marks, which puts you right into the narrator's thoughts. Nurse Julia Power and her adult orphan assistant Bridie Sweeney are unforgettable characters. Their closeness develops into a brief and intense romance that feels very natural considering the circumstances. There's also an actual historical revolutionary lesbian doctor and a lot of exposing of Ireland's atrocities, the church, and the treatment of the poor. All of this happening in the context of World War I and the Spanish flu epidemic. Just daily life at the time and many parallels to now. One thing about Pull is it's packed with grim and gory detail, but it really moves along, and the characters are wonderful. I wanted to mention Attica Locke's second Highway 59 series mystery just came out in paperback, or it's coming out in paperback August 25th. The author takes her lyrical titles from blues songs, and I, for one, can't get enough of Texas Ranger Darren Matthews and his struggles. In the novel, we pick up right where he left off at the end of Bluebird, Bluebird, in his conscribed Texas world with its complicated history, race relations, and even more complicated, his own more complicated family and personal relationships. In this book, Matthews is on the hunt for a missing child, but it's the family of the child who are white supremacists that he's really after. He struggles with his allegiances sometimes. Okay, and then I'm going to talk about a few kids' books. The Silver Arrow by Lev Grossman is coming out September 1st. It's his middle grade debut, and it's a stunner. It's Kate's 11th birthday, which isn't shaping up to be too hot until a mysterious wealthy uncle shows up and gives her a train. It's a real train, a giant magical steam locomotive that talks. So she and her brother, younger brother Tom, get to help build the train, and they choose some really fun things like a library car, a candy car, I think a swimming pool, and they chug off to adventure. And it keeps getting better because the train talks to them and has a personality, and he guides them. He prints out his conversation and instructions on a little piece of roll of paper that spits out. And And then even better, because we meet the unique cast of talking animals that are refugees, really, that Tom and Kate end up carrying to new homes when they've lost their own. Story has strong characters. It's sure to endure, snappy dialogue and a breezy pace. It's about growing up and taking responsibility, maybe even changing the world. So it's sure to become a classic for fans of the Chronicles of Narnia and Roald Dahl. The Truth About Dragons is a gorgeous picture book.
Danielle, you have 1 minute.
By Jamie Zollers that teaches us to look beyond our fears. I want to show you some of the illustrations. It's really pretty. So it's about really the first day of school and seeing beyond your fears to what's really there. So as the book goes on, you see these scary dragons transform into school children. The Alphabet's Alphabet is written and illustrated by an accomplished pair, Chris Harris and Dan Santat. It has hilarious rhyming and alphabet antics. This one's about recognizing ourselves and others and realizing that we're all part of a larger family, like the letters are part of the alphabet. So there's some great rhyming. The B is a D whose belt's on too tight. If I looks like W and we agree that W also looks something like E and E looks like an F, F looks like A, so you get the idea. I look like you. The Invention of Sound by Chuck Palahniuk. He's a best-selling author. This one is about two characters in Hollywood and goes into the history of the Wilhelm scream. It's a dark noirish thrill ride, and I'm not going to get through all my books, but
You're right at time, Danielle.
Okay, thanks very much.
Sure.
You can look at my look at my slideshow, and I'll be faster next time.
Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you.
We did have a couple of comments in chat. I forgot to mention up top, if you do have a question, please throw it in chat and we'll get to it after the presentation. Nancy Bainan wrote, the Emma Donahue book is so good. Sarah Baggy wrote, excited to hear about all these books. Heaven My Home is amazing.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Great. Next up, we have John Mesjak, Emily Johnson, and Sandra Law from Abraham Associates.
Howdy.
Hello. Hey, everyone.
Screen here. There we go.
Perfect. All right. So I'm Sandra Law. I'm with Abraham Associates, and today I'm joined by Emily Johnson and John Mesjak. We're going to be talking about some of our favorite adult titles for fall. And after the presentation, please make sure to check out our Edelweiss collection. We have even more titles listed in there that we will not be able to talk about today. So to start out, we have Dolly Parton's Songteller. This is coming from this fall from Chronicle Books. This book has it all if you love Dolly. Handwritten lyrics paired with personal artifacts, memorabilia, and family photos, most of which has never been shared before. With her new podcast, Dolly is having a bit of a resurgence and is even finding a newer fan base along with her longtime fans. She will have a new Christmas song that is releasing this October that will come out alongside of the book. But we are very excited for this one.
Hey everybody, I'm Emily. Next we have 100 Cookies from Sarah Kiefer, and this is the ultimate cookie cookbook. Sarah is a self-taught baker who writes the Vanilla Bean Baking blog, and she lives in Minneapolis. The book features 100 recipes for cookies, brownies, blondies, and bars, and also includes some innovative baking techniques. The one that she's most well known for is the pan banging technique that ensures crisp edges and soft centers for the most delicious cookies. So this book is basically just going to have the full chronicle treatment, meaning high production quality, and almost every single recipe will have a full color photograph.
Hey everybody, it's John. I've got a book from Lawrence King now, How Should One Read a Book, which was originally published by Virginia Woolf in her 1932 collection, The Common Reader Second Series. It's a short, impassioned essay on the ways and means of reading a book, any book, poems and novels, histories and memoirs, dictionaries and blue books, as she says in the essay. This is its first standalone edition as a book. It's a beautiful little gift edition for Woolf fans and lovers of reading with gorgeous illustrations inside it, a giftable trim size, and it's got an introduction from novelist Sheila Heti. That is that. We're moving on.
All right, and from Haymarket Books, we have Azadi, Freedom, Fascism, Fiction from Arundhati Roy, who is also known for her books Ministry of Utmost Magic and Booker Prize winning The God of Small Things. The title Azadi is actually Urdu for freedom, and this collection of essays challenges us to reflect on the meaning of freedom and how the current pandemic affects our freedoms in this world of growing authoritarianism. Roy uses meditations on language and crafts a message infused with hope and inspiration to give us an opportunity to imagine another world.
All right, up next we have Making Abolitionist Worlds. This is from Common Notions, which is a publisher that's new to Consortium this season. They are a Brooklyn-based nonfiction publisher that's focused on social justice critiques and strategies. So Making Abolitionist Worlds is a collection of writings addressing the question, what does an abolitionist world look like? It's a primer for understanding the radical intersectionality of today's social movements, from the abolition of prisons and police to feminism, queer liberation, and more. It's an exciting follow-up really for anybody who's read The New Jim Crow or anything by Angela Davis and wants to just keep digging and thinking and learning. The editorial group behind the book, Abolition Collective, is made up of leading scholars and activists in the world of criminal justice reform.
Up next from Gallic Books is the latest from Antoine Loren, The Reader's Room. Antoine is an indie bookseller favorite, society journalist, former antiques dealer, and I think I can say without exaggeration, he's the best French author to have spent time traveling in my car. Here, Antoine combines his passion for novels filled with romantic longing, Parisian landmarks, and charming star-crossed lovers with a mystery. The main protagonist of this novel is Violaine Lepage, the head of a Parisian publishing company's Reader's Room, the team of editors who search through the slush pile in search of the next hit novel. When the Reader's Room's latest discovery becomes both a nominee for the French prize, the Prix Goncourt, and the inspiration for a series of murders, Violaine must help solve the crimes, or admit that she has no idea who the author really is.
Up next, we have One Night, Two Souls Went Walking. And this is a beautiful and poetic story of a young hospital chaplain offering compassion to her patients over the course of a single night. She's joined unexpectedly by a mangy dog that may or may not be a ghost as she tends to the souls of the sick and dying. It's literary, but it's not depressing, and it's humorous, but it's not snarky. It's just a really thoughtful and hopeful book that's the first in a series of 3 novels that Ellen Cooney has planned about working women.
Next up from School of Life, they continue helping us to explore the psychological aspects of living our everyday lives. And here for the first time, the School of Life has made a cookbook, one that shows us how food can sustain ideas and emotions that help us confront the challenges of our own existence. It's a classic School of Life approach. It has a manifesto that's got suggested menus of conversation topics, and among the recipes are thoughtful essays. But it does have over 150 recipes featuring 16 key ingredients that the recipes are built around, like avocado or honey or figs or olive oil, each of which evoke a specific emotion like hope or playfulness. There's some page spreads that I forgot to click through because I got distracted. And here's Biblioasis.
All right, and from Biblioasis, we have 3 new titles in the Ghost Story for Christmas series. This brings the title count now to 17 books. The first one, Open Door, is a supernatural story about a haunted mansion and a colonel doing what he can to save his sick son. A story of disappearance and an appearance. In this spooky tale, W.R. travels to search for his missing uncle. After an unusual encounter, he begins to have terrible nightmares. And Morgan Trust, an amateur psychic investigator, travels to a Welsh mountain village. Once he arrives, he begins to encounter very strange things. As you can see, spooky tales are not just for Halloween. I mean, you can also order a display pre-pack with these titles. And just to get an idea of how awesome and adorable the set covers are and the book size is, I have an example of some of the older titles right here. But they're very awesome. They pair really well on a counter or a cute display.
We love those. Next up from Oxford University Press, we've got The New Negro, The Life of Alan Locke.
You have 1 minute, John.
Okay. Coming out in paperback this fall, it's the Pulitzer Prize and National Book Award winning biography of Alan Locke, who is known as the father of the Harlem Renaissance. I mean, what more do you really need to know? It won multiple prizes last year. It's out in paperback. We'll throw it over to Sandra for Quarto.
Now we have New World Sourdough by Brian Ford. Born in New Orleans and growing up with Honduran roots, Ford gives you his best tips and tricks from his own practice that he has developed. He is currently the head baker for Ironside Bakery and is best known for his sourdough pan de coco recipe inspired by traditional Honduran bread. This is actually a spring title, but has recently received a ton of press and has already gone through a reprint. So make sure you get your copies today.
And lastly, for something delightful and super weird, Max Siedentopf, Home Alone is a bizarre little $14 guide to indoor fun in the time of the pandemic. Max is a real artist, and he debuted this project on Instagram while he was self-quarantining at home, and he would just post an idea with his own results and invite other people to join in. I think John has some spreads here. I'll just read you off some of the prompts to give you a feel for the bizarre and hilarity. Create a building with whatever you can find in your kitchen. Create a bloody horror scene using ketchup. Wear all your clothes at the same time. Create a bathtub monster. Collect all the dust and create a new animal. Wear all your books as a hat. Create a pentagram on the floor to summon the underworld, and become Wolverine using cutlery. So basically it's just a really lighthearted book acknowledging that we've all had to get a little innovative to try and cope with life right now. So we have our full collection. I think it's linked in the chat, and thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, John. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Sandra. Looks like your question was answered in chat, so there will be Christmas mystery display. Up next, we have Emily Botica from Diamond Book Distributors.
Thanks. Let me share my screen. There we go. If you're not familiar with Diamond Books, we predominantly distribute graphic novels. So I will be showing you some of our top both adult and kid graphic novels for late this summer and this fall. I'm going to start out with a title you guys may have seen. I hope you've seen, Mr. Invincible Local Hero. Mr. Invincible is the winner of the first annual Ragazzi Award at this year's Bologna Book Fair for Best Middle Grade Comic. It has been given starred reviews at Booklist, Kirkus, and Publishers Weekly. So we're really excited about that. Mr. Invincible is the newest superhero who thwarts the bad guys with his amazing superpower that allows him to reach outside the comic strip panels to affect both space and time. By breaking the boundaries of comic book physics, he and his companions can do amazing things that are only possible thanks to the magic of comics. This is a creative twist on the conventional comic book reading experience that plays with the rules of sequential art. This middle grade title is told in comic strip style and is imaginative and laugh out loud funny. This will appeal to fans of The Lunch Lady and is intended for readers ages 9 to 12. Next up, from one of our newer publishers, Ablaze, this is Wild Thing or My Life as a Wolf. This is the story of an affectionate and inquisitive Labrador named Silver, who grew up on a sheep farm. But Silver dreams of adventure, and bored by the monotony of life, he stumbles across a pack of wolves, and attracted by their freedom, he decides to follow them. This is a beautiful tale told from the perspective of a loving dog that tells the story of adventure, love, and the brutal effects humans are having on this planet and the creatures that inhabit it. With its crisp color and stunning artwork, this will appeal to fans of Beasts of Burden and is intended for middle grade readers ages 9 to 12. American Terrorist is one of our adult graphic novels. How far should protesters go to make their case? Is the news media biased because of corporate ownership? What is the dividing line between civil liberties and keeping the country safe? That's what the graphic novel From a Wave Blue World tackles in American Terrorist. When 4 average citizens take extreme measures to disrupt a rigged and corrupt system. This has a foreword from New York Times columnist George Gustins. American Terrorist is Homeland meets Bonnie and Clyde and is appropriate for teens ages 16 and up. The Old Geezers might be one of my favorite titles in my selection here. It's from Ablaze, again, one of our newer publishers. So this is an adult graphic novel that tells the story of 3 septuagenarians, I love that word, who have been friends since childhood. They have each taken different paths in life, and the story moves back and forth between the 50s and the present day, telling a sometimes tragic and sometimes comedic tale. It is laugh out loud funny. It has a lot of political and social and cultural upheavals throughout the book. It has crisp dialogue, compelling characters, and exaggerated art that play up the characterization. And this will appeal to fans of The Contract with God and Mouse, and is intended for teen readers ages 16 and up. Another one of our kids' books, Diary of a Nerd. This is the story of Phil, who is a 12-year-old boy living in Manhattan. He is a smart, interesting, self-proclaimed nerd who believes in fantasy way too much. And he likes spending time with his friends, the geek team, and is in love with his classmate, Lauren. But Lauren has a boyfriend, Ted, who is unfortunately a bully. The Diary of a Nerd is a hilarious book consisting of 2 different diaries written by Phil, one of a young genius and one of a boy in his quest for love. There's some internal pages here. With a cult following around the world, Diary of a Nerd will soon be an animated series and has several spin-off books in the works. This is the first time Diary of a Nerd is coming to the United States. This will appeal to fans of Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Dork Diaries, and Jedi Academy, and is intended for middle grade readers ages 9 to 12. Killaman is an examination of an unlikely crossover, male queer culture and mixed martial arts. In the early days of mixed martial arts, kickboxer icon DJ Belly is beaten to death in the ring after yelling a homosexual slur at an opponent, while his young son James watches in horror from the stands. 16 years later, James has become an MMA star, but when he is outed as gay by an opponent, he loses everything. To fight his way back, he turns to the only one left willing to train him, the man who killed his father. The plot is tightly written, the characters are believable and empathetic, and the artwork is brilliant, vibrant, intense, and powerful. On the surface, it may seem like just another sport comic, but underneath there's so much more. This will appeal to fans of Fence, Slam, and Muhammad Ali, and is intended for older teens ages 16 and up. The Resistance is the magnum opus from new publisher AWA, Artists, Writers, and Artisans, and the newest series from comics powerhouse J. Michael Straczynski. A global disaster leaves hundreds of millions dead, and shortly after, thousands suddenly have newfound superpowers. This is the start of AWA's new superhero universe. It will appeal to fans of Amazing Spider-Man and X-Men, and is intended for teens ages 16 and up. From Image Comics, Norroway Book 2. The Norroway series has been hailed as the best of the best books by the Chicago Public Library. Norroway is the retelling of a Scottish fairy tale that follows young Sibylla as she humorously learns her fate as the intended bride to the cursed Black Bull of Norway. In volume 2, the story fast forwards 7 years as Sibylla discovers her curse-breaking destiny. The magical fantasy adventure is perfect for fans of Beauty and the Beast and other classic myths, and is intended for kids ages 12 and up.
Emily, you have 1 minute.
Also from Image Comics, we have Pulp. Pulp is a crime noir western about Max Winters, a pulp writer in 1930s New York who finds himself drawn into a story not unlike the tales he churns out at 5 cents a word. When pursued by bank robbers, Nazi spies, and enemies from his past, will Max be able to keep up? 1 part thriller, 1 part meditation on a life of violence, Pulp is unlike anything Brubaker and Phillips have ever done. Perfect to hand sell fans of The Fade Out, Kill or Be Killed, Criminal, and Bad Weekend, and is good for teens ages 16 and up. And finally, from Image Comics, we have Blue in Green. This is a dark and haunting portrayal of a young musician and his pursuit of creative genius at any cost, the monstrous nature of which threatens to consume him as it did those that came before him. This will appeal to fans of Memento and Uzumaki and is perfect for the autumn and any Halloween horror roundup and displays, and is good for older teens ages 16 and up. And that's what I've got, guys. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Emily. That's great. Next up, we have Matt Smiley from University of Minnesota Press.
Hi, everybody. Share my screen. All right, thanks for tuning in. I've been trying to listen pretty closely to reports from you all about what kind of books are doing well in the pandemic era. And one of the common themes that seems to come up with some regularity is that many readers are looking for some kind of well-written escapism, something that takes us away from our present concerns, away from the alarming, depressing downward spiral of America, and particularly American political institutions. So let's escape to a more innocent, less paranoid, less corrupt America. Let's go back to the Nixon era. And I've got 2 books that do just that. The first is a new novel from Len Enger. He's the author of The High Divide and Undiscovered Country. His new one, American Gospel, centers on a charismatic doomsday prophet, his estranged son, and kind of the girl next door who went on to make it big in Hollywood before being drawn back to the prophet's compound in rural Minnesota, where everybody is gathering to witness the end of days. All this is set against the backdrop of the imploding Nixon presidency. I hope you all had a chance to check out Lynn's presentation earlier this month during the Meet the Authors session. If not, it's posted on the Heartland Fall Forum website, so you can go back and give it a look. I hope you do. The other book that I have that's set in the same era here is Allen Ginsberg's The Fall of America journals. This is the 3rd book in a set of previously unpublished journal entries that we're publishing from Ginsberg. If you haven't encountered them yet, this is a really good one to dig into. These journal entries are based largely on spontaneously composed reel-to-reel recordings that Ginsberg made as he was touring and traveling all around the country during the late 60s. They contain his deepest thoughts on the passing of his friends like Jack Kerouac and Neil Cassidy, early drafts of some of his best-known poems that were later gathered into the National Book Award-winning volume, The Fall of America. And they also contain just sort of his general musings on the best and the worst of what America has to offer at the time. So I know some of you are probably thinking, yes, the deepest recesses of Allen Ginsberg's mind and his innermost thoughts, that'd be a fascinating thing to check out. You probably know some poetry fans and poets whose bookshelves just won't be complete without all 3 volumes. But if this isn't quite the kind of escapism that all readers are pining for, we can try a different tack. Maybe we can do a little bit of armchair travel. I hear Norway is lovely this time of year, and I just so happen to have a great book on Norway, except it's set in medieval Norway, in the times of the Norwegian Civil War, which looked more like this. And there's, murder and blood money being exchanged and just general mayhem prevailing as dozens of kings were all fighting together to lay claim to the Norwegian throne at the time. This is the setting for Sigurd Undset's epic work of historical fiction, generally known previously as The Master of Hestviken. This is a tetralogy that Unset wrote as the follow-up to Kirsten Lavenstrader. And so here with Olaf Odinson Vows, we have the first volume in this 4-part series. We're calling the series Olaf Odinson, just a little truer to how it's known in Norway. This book is considered to be on par among Norwegian readers with Kirsten Lavenstrader, and it just needed really a proper translation, which Tina Nunnally has provided us with. Tina was the translator for Penguin's hugely successful Kirsten Lavenstrader editions, so Olaf is in good hands here. The cover design, I think, was also in good hands. It's a little dark and hard to see here, but I just have to show you this. The cover of volume 1 here, just it fits into this this sweet little Easter egg. If you get all 4 volumes together, you can see this great close-up portrait of this man who's going through something very intense. From here, we can jump to a few great outdoorsy titles, some great armchair adventure that I can share with you all. Wolf Island and Hudson Bay Bound. Wolf Island is a new memoir from L. David Meach about research that he conducted on Isle Royal, which is up in Lake Superior in the late 1950s. This is a great blend of memoir writing, nature writing, and innovative scientific research that really became foundational to the field of wolf biology. Meach is like the founder of modern wolf research, and this is one of his first projects. And he was studying wolves here that walked across an ice bridge to this island where there were no wolves before, and he watched what happened to them and what happened to the moose population of that island once that ice bridge melted, and he had this perfectly self-contained, petri dish to study those kinds of interactions. It's a fascinating case study. Pretty much every blockbuster book on wolves that's come out since then has drawn on Meach's work on Isle Royal and elsewhere. My other outdoorsy adventure book that I'd like to share with you draws inspiration from Eric Severide's Canoeing with the Cree. This one is called Hudson Bay Bound, and it's a memoir of 2 young women who set out to retrace Eric Severide's epic canoe journey. It was a route that he took from Minneapolis down to Mankato, over to the Dakota borders and up the Red River, through Ontario, all the way up to the Hudson Bay. This is a wonderfully contemporary, environmentally astute, feminist update to the experience of undertaking that journey. I think it's a lot of fun. Sticking with the canoeing theme, we can do a little pivot here to books for young readers, starting with One Summer Up North from illustrator John Owens. This is his debut book, but this is a wordless picture book about a family canoe trip, and it is so cute, as you'll see from the sort of grainy JPEG images that I have here. Sorry about the quality, but we've got this reluctant young girl here who's not all enthusiastic at the start of this book, but as the journey goes on, she kind of sees her family draw closer together. She starts to witness all the wonders of the natural world, and she just develops this huge smile that stays with her throughout the rest of the book. And it's just a really special way to connect with the outdoors here. Next, we have the 3rd and final installment in Margie Preuss's Enchantment Lake Mystery series. This is called the Silver Box, and this is, like Nancy Drew of the North Woods, aimed at middle grade readers. The first 2 books in this series did really well for us, and one even earned Margie a Midwest Bookseller's Choice Award. Thank you for that.
You have 1 minute left, Matt.
Thank you. And this one, Margie just does a fantastic job of tying everything together in a really satisfying way. Really quickly, I just also want to point out that we're bringing in one of Louise Erdrich's illustrated children's books back into print. This one has been kind of hard to find for a few years, and I think it's a must-have for any bookshelf that's focused on diverse voices. And then I just want to stick with the theme of BIPOC voices here to finish with 2 great life stories, My Life in the Purple Kingdom and Nellie Francis. So My Life in the Purple Kingdom is a memoir of Prince's bassist during the Purple Rain era. This isn't really like the behind-the-scenes salacious gossip about sex and drugs and rock and roll. It's really more about the daily grind of living, touring, and working with someone like Prince, a mercurial, perfectionist genius. Anything that we publish that remotely touches on Prince tends to sell really well for us, and I expect this one to be no different. And I'll end with Nellie Francis. This is a first-rate biography of an inspirationally effective African-American activist and reformer whose story I think would otherwise be lost if it wasn't for William Green's efforts here. She was really instrumental in the fight for women's rights to vote and for early, kind of racial justice causes in the early 20th century. Like so many other Black wave feminists who are instrumental in those movements, I think her story has been kind of marginalized until now. But this book will hopefully do some restorative work that's necessary to bring these important but maybe nearly forgotten stories to light. So thank you for your time. And that's it for me.
Great, thank you, Matt. Matt brought his A game with those slide transitions. That was great. Next up, we have Valerie Pierce from Sourcebooks.
Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's doing really well. Let me just share my screen with you guys. Perfect. So my first book is a book called 1,000 No's, which I think a lot of us have heard a lot of no's lately, thanks to COVID-19. No, we can't do this. No, we can't do that. And that's exactly what happens to the little girl in 1,000 No's. She has an amazing idea and she gets no after no after no. But what's really great about this Shel Silverstein-esque book is that it teaches us that even though great ideas sometimes get no, they can actually help us turn a great idea into an extraordinary idea. And I think that's something that we all need right now. This is a story about grit, perseverance, innovation, and it shows us that amazing things can happen if we just keep going on and keep working really hard. And that's actually the very last spread of the book is the word yes, which is made up of a bunch of different no's. So that's 1,000 No's, which is coming out in August. Next up, I am hoping that most of you will be gasping in delight for this new book from Raj Haldar. His previous book, P is for Pterodactyl, the worst alphabet book ever, was a #1 New York Times bestseller and an Indie Next Pick. And it captured the hearts and laughs of children, parents, teachers, librarians, booksellers, and generally all human beings everywhere. In No Reading Aloud, the worst read aloud book ever, Raj has some homophone fun with the English language by pairing similar sounding sentences and illustrating them in two hilariously different ways. So, for example, they bowled in all caps, i.e. the men who wore caps went bowling, or they bowled in all caps. The word they is bolded and placed in all caps. No Reading Aloud pubs in November. It is available on Edelweiss, and they do have a couple of print galleys of this one as well. Next up is Off to See the Sea by Coretta Scott King award-winning author Nikki Grimes and illustrator Elizabeth Zunon. Nikki and Elizabeth's previous book was Sourcebooks, Bedtime for Sweet Creatures, received 4-star reviews and was featured in the New York Times Book Review and the Wall Street Journal. Off to Sea is a truly gorgeous picture book that follows a little girl who really does not want to take a bath. Elizabeth Zunon's incredible illustrations turn what could be a mundane, everyday event into a truly magical experience. This is a beautiful gift to give to parents. It's great for story time, and it's a perfect companion to Bedtime for Sweet Creatures, which features the same little girl and her parents as they try to wrangle her into bed. Off to Sea pubs in hardcover in January, and it is on Edelweiss, and I do have galleys of that one too. I'm hoping many of you remember The Radium Girls, which Sourcebooks published back in 2017. It's one of my personal favorite books of all time, and I'm so thrilled to tell you guys that we have a young reader edition coming in September. As a reminder, the story focuses on the young women in the early 1900s who worked in the radium dial factories. The women were instructed to dip paintbrushes into their radium solution, then put it in their mouths to make a fine tip, and then paint the dials. Yikes! This story focuses on the women years later discovering that this process obviously made them incredibly ill, and it's about their fight for justice against the radium companies, which ultimately revolutionized workers' rights. I think kids are going to really love this. There's honestly a lot of yuck ick moments that middle grade age will love. The women's jaws literally started coming out. The bones started coming out of their mouths. Bones started changing shapes. So this is just a really great companion to the adult book, so adults and kids can read this one together. So do you guys love a good, creepy middle grade book? If you answered yes, then you will fall in love with Lindsay Curry's super scary Scritch Scratch. Set in Chicago, Scritch Scratch features rational, logical Claire, a middle school girl who is totally humiliated that she actually has to help out her dad on his ghost-themed Chicago bus tours. But one day something strange happens. She sees a boy who mysteriously vanishes on the bus. And then she starts to hear voices whispering to her in the dark. And then the number 396 starts appearing everywhere. And then there's this weird scratching sound. Claire realizes that she's being haunted. The boy from the bus wants something, and Claire needs to find out what that is before it's too late. Moving into YA, we have a new book coming from Marika Nijkamp, one of the founding members of We Need Diverse Books, and the #1 New York Times bestselling author of This Is Where It Ends and Before I Let Go. Marika's newest book, Even If We Break, is a nail-biting thriller that's a great mashup of what I would call The Breakfast Club and Friday the 13th. 5 teens have been friends since sophomore year of high school. They're all incredibly different. And as the end of high school draws near, they decide to gather together in a remote cabin. But things soon take a dark turn. One person vanishes, another person suddenly shows up dead, and we realize that one of the teens in that cabin is to blame. So will any of them come out alive? You will have to download this from Edelweiss or ask me for a print copy to find out more. And I cannot do a presentation without talking about Claire Legrand, her Imperium trilogy. Lightbringer, the final installment of the series, will be coming out in September. We know that fans have been waiting for this since Kingsbane last year. As a quick reminder, the first book in the series, Furyborn, was an Indie Next pick, and both previous books in the series were New York Times bestsellers. And the series centers around 2 strong, fascinating, flawed young women, the Sun Queen, who will bring light and prosperity to the world, and the Blood Queen, who's destined to throw the world into strife and turmoil. Lightbringer comes out in October. Moving into adult fiction, Stuart Turton, the author of The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, is back. The Devil in the Dark Water is part Sherlock Holmes, part Pirates of the Caribbean, with a dash of Stephen King thrown in just for fun. So what happens when a brilliant detective and his friend are trapped on a ship with a leper who's allegedly already died, a mysterious force that paints demonic symbols on the sails, and a crew that's a hair's breadth away from complete mutiny? Download The Devil in the Dark Water to find out. This book pops in October in hardcover. Next is Three Single Wives by Gina Lamanna, the Minneapolis-based author of Pretty Guilty Women. In this new domestic thriller, 3 women get together at a book club and jokingly plot the death of a philandering husband, as you do after a couple glasses of wine. But the next morning, the cops arrive, announcing the murder of said husband, and all of the details match the plot the women devised the night before. Is one of them a murderer? If so, which one? And are any of the women really safe? Valerie, how many questions are you going to ask me during this presentation? If you want to find out more, you'll have to download this on Edelweiss. And let me just tell you, after reading this, that book club has never been so deadly. And we have a new book from Carolyn B. Cooney, the author of The Face on the Milk Carton. Carolyn is truly a national treasure. She is one of the most delightful, sweet, giving authors I have ever met. And her book is
Valerie, you have 1 minute.
Thanks, Larry. Quick note on this, her new book, Before She Was Helen, is actually for adults. Her main character is Helen, a 70-year-old woman who lives in a retirement community. She seems like your average retiree, but her name isn't really Helen. It's something else. And when her neighbor disappears under suspicious circumstances, she starts to get nervous. She starts to sweat as the police come around, because if they start digging into her past, they might uncover a body or 2. So make sure to check this one out. It comes out in September in hardcover. For this next one, I am just going to read the blurb that amazing bookseller Mary O'Malley wrote for this. Every Bone of Prayer is everything and nothing. It is a love story to Kentucky and a horror story. It is cold and dark and sad and magical. It is fantasy and lyrical and the Glass Castle and Lovely Bones and The Invited and Cat Person and a little Stephen King. It is everything and is like nothing I've ever read before. With shades of Colson Whitehead's writing, Ashley Blooms has delivered a genre-bending indie next-worthy blockbuster of a book. And last but not least is The Last Stargazers by award-winning astronomer Emily Levesque. From being chased by bears to dealing with tarantulas and combating sexism in science, The Last Stargazers is an incredible nonfiction narrative that takes you behind the scenes to see what it's like to be an astronomer. This comes out in August in hardcover. And that's it. Thank you guys so much for listening to me. Reach out if you'd like any books.
Hey, thank you, Valerie. That was great. And last up, we have Alexa Wejko from Soho Press.
Hello. Hi, guys. Thank you. I feel like hopefully it's a last but not least situation, but I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to get to that in a second. So I am from Soho Press. I know some of you, and it's really happy to see some familiar names in the attendees scroll. So hi, everybody. And really quickly, Soho Press is an independent press based in New York City. We have 3 imprints: adult literary imprint, a crime imprint, and a teen imprint. I'm going to be talking about books that span all of those imprints. So without further ado, so this is our big book of the season. We don't generally do nonfiction, but with Jacqueline Winspear, we knew we had to. She is a household name, especially in the crime community, but she is the New York Times bestselling author many times over of the Maisie Dobbs series. So if you're not familiar with those, you can still enjoy this excellent memoir called, this very kind of aspirationally titled, "This Time Next Year We'll Be Laughing." I certainly hope that's true. And this one is a shockingly frank memoir that tackles difficult, poignant family memories that kind of that come from her family's experience in the aftermath of World War II in London and also in Kent. Some of the topics that are broached are her paternal grandfather's shell shock, her mother's evacuation from London during the Blitz, her parents' years living with the Romani people, and her own child picking hops in the Kent countryside, in the rural Kent countryside, and then also kind of the formation of the investigator Maisie Dobbs, which again has gone on to kind of take the crime world and mystery world by storm. So this memoir is both eye-opening and heartfelt. Again, a portrayal of post-war England that's actually rarely seen, especially in memoir. But it's also a very kind of heartwarming story of childhood in the English countryside, of working class indomitability and family secrets, and also, like I said, of artistic inspiration. It's kind of like a craft book as well, in a way. But most of all, I think this one is really well suited for our times because it feels rooted in the durability and strength of the human spirit, especially in times of great difficulty on a world scale. So that is This Time Next Year We'll Be Laughing by Jacqueline Winspear. And then we have a lovely blurb from Anne Lamott. And this one, also, I saw Pamela's name on the list of attendees. I should have included that blurb. So hi, Pamela. But hopefully a lot of you will be familiar with my next book, or rather the next author, which is Thomas Maltman. Thomas Maltman is the author of the Indie Next Pick and all Iowa Reads selection Little Wolves, and also The Nightbirds. So you may be familiar with him. I hope you are, but if you're not, welcome. His latest novel out in October is called The Land. What Thomas does best, he's kind of in his true form here. It's a story of violence at the heart of a pastoral landscape, but it's also what we like to call a spiritual noir because it's very much about going within. So the basic premise of this one is that it's centered around a character named Lucian Swenson. He is recovering from a terrible auto accident. He has dropped out of college. Oh, sorry, I neglected to say that this also happens at the turn of the millennium in Y2K. So it is rooted a bit in the past, but it feels like kind of on the verge of apocalypse, which, you know, fortunately or not, feels kind of timely to what we're going through now. And he's also a hobbyist computer game programmer. He decides to become the caretaker of a house in very, very rural northern Minnesota under the guise of recovering from his accident. But he has a secret intention, which is that he wants to set out to find a woman with whom he had an affair, who recently vanished along with money stolen from the bank where they worked together. So it is a bit of a mystery. It is that spiritual noir, but it is also an excellent adult literary novel. And his search takes him to a church called Rose of Sharon, which is a white supremacist church deep in the wilderness, where he learns her husband leads a congregation. Here, he also finds a cabal of outcasts who await the end of the world at a place they call the Land, thus the title of the novel. For those who know Thomas Maltman, you'll know already that he weaves in these supernatural elements in a very literary way, in a very compelling way. So while he's going on this kind of quest, Lucian is visited at the house by a mysterious guest who may or may not be who she claims, as well as a vast flock of ravens out of an apocalyptic vision. So again, this is a great mystery. It's a great spiritual noir, but it explores the dark side of belief, entrenched white supremacy in the United States, and also the uniquely American obsession with end times, and also the sacrifices we make for those we love. So that is The Land by Thomas Maltman. We're very excited for this one. Excuse me, moving on to our teen imprint really quickly, we have a very exciting title called Finding My Voice by Marie Myung-Ok Lee. This one is actually a reissue, but it's a total reissue and repackage, and this book not only holds a special place in my heart, it holds a special place in the history of YA literature. So this is widely considered the first own voices novel published by an Asian American author. It was originally published in the early 90s and has been variously in and out of print, but it feels so relevant to our current times, we just had to jump on it when we knew we could. It has a new foreword by Kat Cho, who is author of Wicked Fox. And it is really excellent, like I said, for any YA reader, but especially those interested kind of in YA books or YA as a genre. It's a lot like Frankly in Love and also Eleanor and Park, although it precedes both of them. And the basic premise is one of self-discovery. It's about 17-year-old Ellen Sung, who just wants to be like everyone else at her all-white school, but deals with bullying and also racism. And also, I also neglected to say that it's set in Minnesota. So she has to navigate this kind of the issues in her everyday life, but finds herself falling for the quarterback, Tom Sandel, a popular football player. And to her surprise, he falls for her too. And the trajectory from there is really more about her finding her own voice as opposed to the romance, but there is that element of romance too. So look out for that. Marie is also a very high profile author. She is a journalist and is very involved in the literary community. She publishes regularly in The Atlantic, Teen Vogue, and also is a founding member of the Asian American Writers Workshop. So we're really excited to bring new life to this novel and also bring it to a new generation of readers. And then this one is one of my favorites. This is back to our, adult literary imprint, The Revolution According to Raimundo Mata by Gina Apostle. Anyone familiar with Gina Apostle's Insurrecto, which was kind of like an indie smash hit in, I want to say 2018. We published it, but you know, time is meaningless now, so I don't quite remember. But this is like Gina at top form. This is the first time this book will be published in the United States. It was originally published in the Philippines, and it won the 2010 Philippine National Book Award. So that is also just very, very exciting for us.
Alexa, you have 1 minute.
Great, thank you. This one takes the form of a kind of metafiction narrative. It is framed as the memoirs of a fictional Philippine revolutionary named Raimundo Mata, and who's kind of based on the real revolutionary Jose Rizal. But it's very funny. It's kind of annotated by various scholars who argue in the margins of the book. So it has kind of a Nabokovian or John Barth-esque tone. It's very playful while also like shedding a great light on the war and the revolution in the Philippines. So that is The Revolution According to Raimundo Mata. And I have run out of time, but very quickly, The Opium Prince is a very exciting crime debut we have set in 1970s Afghanistan by debut author Jasmine Imok. So I can't go into it too much, but this is also one of our top picks for our crime books this year. If you're looking for great crime novels, especially political thrillers, I would highly recommend checking this one out. And then a really quick plug for 2 paperbacks we have coming out, a deluxe edition of More Happy Than Not, one of our most successful teen novels ever, that actually has a new ending in this edition. And then also Rabbits for Food, a paperback coming out, the hardcover comes out in paperback in September, and that is by Benny Kirschenbaum and is just a marvel. So that's it. Please contact us. We're on Idlewise, and thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Alexa. That was great.
Oh, I can share now. Sorry.
Lost it. There we go. All right, thank you. That wraps it up. I want to thank our participating reps today, John Mesjak, Emily Johnson, and Sandra Law from Abraham Associates, Emily Botica from Diamond Book Distributors, Matt Smiley from University of Minnesota Press, Valerie Pierce from Sourcebooks, and Alexa Wejko from Soho Press. If you weren't able to grab the Edelweiss collection links in the chat, do not worry about it. They will be posted with the video on the Heartland Fall Forum website. And lastly, I just want to remind everybody tomorrow night, 7 p.m., join us for an evening with Helen McDonald and Robin Wall-Kimmerer. But other than that wraps it up. So thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.